But I want you to notice something with me. Notice very carefully. If you're in Luke 21, look with me. Verse 10. Nation will rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes in various places, famines and pestilences. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven. Now make sure you don't miss that last part. Great signs from heaven.
And it shall come to pass afterward, that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my Spirit. And I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be delivered.
Because it grew so strong so quickly. And each hour here in Corpus Christi, we've been feeling that strength grow with the wind and the rain, and now we're already feeling hurricane force winds.
I heard in my spirit, look up the meaning of the name Harvey. Y'all know that the Bible talks about the iron mixed with miry clay in the book of Daniel. Daniel 2:43, the last kingdom of the world shall be the iron mixed with the miry clay, and they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. Well, I've shown y'all what the Lord showed me is the iron is that other race of beings, that, satanic serpent seed presence within humanity. So anyway, this is what the Lord showed me to do. He told me to look up the name Harvey. It means iron, and it means blazing iron, and it means battle ready. The name of the hurricane that's coming for Corpus Christi right now, Corpus Christi means the body of Christ. So a hurricane that's named blazing iron and battle ready is heading for the body of Christ.
So I'm going to go over the difference because I really want you more than anything else to get on God's calendar, to understand His times, His seasons, so you know when to be watching. How many of you know in Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 through 8, it says, for everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. For how many things? Everything? Every single thing. It says a time to kill, to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. There's a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, a time for peace. And my question is, what time is it? Genesis 1:14 again. God said, let there be lights, and let them be for signs, seasons, days, and years. Look at these eclipses. Did you know this series of eclipses happened during the time of the Messiah? You go back, NASA's website confirms it. All of these eclipses were happening the very year and the next year when Messiah died. And what do we see? Israel becomes a nation, and you have 4 blood moons on Passover and Tabernacles. Passover and Tabernacles. 1967, you have again the blood moons, Passover and Tabernacles, Passover and Tabernacles. So the question is, are you on God's calendar? This is what I was talking about when I was here the last time, a couple years ago, 2014, 2015. I never said anything would happen on those dates. I said these are signs of something big coming, especially 2017, 2018, where you're celebrating the Jubilee of Jerusalem becoming a nation or getting recaptured, and then 48 as Israel becoming a nation.
The history here on these blood moon tetrads, the last 7 that have taken place, there's been 8 if you count the one that we are entering now.
There's been 8 if you count the one that we are entering now.
But starting in 162, 163 with this first set of blood moons, it kicked off with the worst persecution of Jews and Christians in the history of the Roman Empire. Okay, then it was followed by a plague that killed 8 million people. And this is just covering some of the earmarks throughout history, the major events that happened right around this blood moon time frame. You have here in 795-796, King Charlemagne of the Holy Roman Empire established a DMZ buffer zone between France and Spain, ending centuries of Arab invasions into Western Europe. Now, in 842-843, shortly after the eclipses, the Vatican Church in Rome was attacked and looted by an Islamic invasion from Africa. 860-861, the Byzantine Empire defeated Arab armies in Turkey and permanently stopped the Islamic invasion of Eastern Europe. Then it kind of shifts to the west, the whole thing with Columbus, 1492, sailing the ocean blue, and everything that happened right after that, from 1493 to 1494. Then enters Israel, 4950. Yes, 1948, Israel declared its independence, but it wasn't until January 1949 when they first took those offices. So it fits right into the time frame of the blood moon tetrad that took place during that time. And the last one that we seen was 1967, 1968, and of course, it is marked by the 6-day war and the retaking of Jerusalem.
How many of you, if you're working and your boss tells you he wants to meet you at 5 o'clock on Friday, what would happen if you tell him that doesn't work in my schedule? How about 2 o'clock on Tuesday? Are you going to be going to work on Monday? Okay. Well, God, this is God's day timer. And he says, look, I'm going to schedule when I'm going to meet with you. So you realize divine appointments are scheduled. They're not, divine appointments are great randomly. But to also know God has scheduled divine appointments. How many of you want to be at the coronation of the Messiah? Okay. How many of you want to be at the wedding of the Messiah? Then don't you think it'd be a good idea to be at the dress rehearsal? Okay, that's what these feasts are. Every single year, it's the dress rehearsal for what's coming.
All of Israel's feast days were centered around the moon, right? But did you know that the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, is the only one that centers around a new moon? Now catch this. When there is a full moon, it's not concealed. When there is a new moon, it's concealed. So the Rosh Hashanah is the day of concealment because the moon is concealed, and only, watch this now, when 2 witnesses see the edge of the moon, do they understand that it's time now for the feast to celebrate. There has to be complete darkness of the new moon, and the month starts, that month starts. See, this is why, in Jerusalem now they don't have to do this. They can tell you exactly when Rosh Hashanah starts because we have calendars, solar calendars, NASA, a spacecraft, everybody knows. In that day, they didn't have that. So what happened is, you'd have to have 2 witnesses. Somebody say 2 witnesses. And those 2 witnesses would have to come before the Sanhedrin here in Jerusalem and announce it. And that's why Rosh Hashanah was a 2-day period. They had a 2-day or a 48-hour window to determine when it started. So, ready for this? No man knew the day or the hour.
We know that the UN has International Day of Peace every year. And it says that the UN resolution established the International Day of Peace in 1981 to coincide with the open of the UN General Assembly. The first Peace Day was celebrated in 1982 and was held on the third day, Tuesday of September each year until 2002, when September 21st became the permanent date for the International Day of Peace. And each year the International Day of Peace is observed around the world on September 21st. The General Assembly has declared this a day devoted to strengthening the ideals of peace both within and among all nations and peoples.
But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape.
Besides the fact that it's falling at the eve of the Feast of Trumpets, there is another reason why this year's International Day of Peace at the UN is so prophetic. So every year they have a theme for the International Day of Peace. Every year it's titled differently, okay? And they've been doing this for years, okay? But I'm going to start here in 2014. And this year they titled the International Day of Peace, the UN's International Day of Peace is titled The Right of Peoples to Peace. Now let's move on to 2015. 2015 they titled the International Day of Peace Partnerships for Peace, Dignity for All. And then in 2016 they named it the Sustainable Development Goals, Building Blocks for Peace. And now for 2017, what do they name it? Hope you're sitting down. Together for Peace and Safety, Dignity for All. They never reuse a theme name, ever. Every year they use a completely different theme name. They never reuse a theme name. So they will never use the name Peace and Safety ever again to describe the International Day of Peace for the UN, for the world.
But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered.
So I have Stellarium pulled up, and what you're looking at is the constellation Virgo, just left of center, and you can see the constellation Leo up towards the right, and the view is if we were standing in Jerusalem looking up at the sky. Now I have the speed set, roughly 1 day equals 1 second. As it moves forward, you're going to see Regulus, the king star, along with Venus, Mars, Mercury, the Sun, Jupiter, and the Moon all come into an alignment. There's a documentary that came out a few years ago with a man named Rick Larson. He discovered the Star of Bethlehem using a very similar program. He ran it backwards until the time of Christ. He was able to find the Star of Bethlehem and also the eclipse at Christ's death. What Scotty did was just take the program and run it forward. He ended up finding the sign that's in Revelation 12, 1 and 2. So immediately following this, you're going to see one of Scotty's animations. I just wanted to show it to you in this program first so that you can understand where it came from.
And I saw a great sign in the heavens. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And being pregnant, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. This great sign occurs on the Feast of Trumpets, an appointed time awaiting its prophetic fulfillment. This sign will occur on September 23rd, 2017.
But he says, "Then shall thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land."
Yeah, the Jubilee, very misunderstood, I think. Nobody today knows when the Jubilee is. Nobody.
Right.
They're speculating. They're guessing. Now, I've got an idea when the Jubilee is, but you can't be dogmatic about this. We don't know. The truth is, there's anywhere in the Scripture is there a record of anybody keeping a Jubilee.
Now, we don't know when the Jubilee was, because we have no record in the time of Jesus. But we do have the record of when the Shemitah was. So the key is, the Jubilee has to come the year after the Shemitah. The 7th Shemitah, 49th Shemitah, leads into the 50th year. So it's got to be the year after a Shemitah.
A Jubilee is I call it the super Sabbath.
Okay.
Because there's 3 major Sabbaths in the Bible. You got the 7-day Sabbath. Everybody's got a pretty good handle on that. The second Sabbath, or major Sabbath in the Bible, is the 7-year Sabbath. Now, the 7-day Sabbath is the rest for man. The 7-year Sabbath is the rest for the land. Let the land rest. Let it rejuvenate its minerals. Let the servants and the animals rest. But then what we call the super Sabbath, or what I call the super Sabbath, every 49 years, or 7 of those 7-year cycles, 7 times 7 is 49. So every 7 cycles of 7 years is 49 years. Now we have a big Sabbath called the Jubilee. And on the Jubilee, as you just read, on the Day of Atonement, the trumpet would sound. By the way, the Day of Atonement is one of those 7 feasts. It's feast number 6. And the Jubilee every 49 years takes place on a feast day. And I believe it's prophetic of Christ coming back on the white horse on the Day of Atonement.
Now, you say every 49 years. Do you mean that year or the year just after that?
That year, on that 49th year, that trumpet would sound. Everybody seems to be confused about this too. If you want to measure Jubilee cycles, it's not 49 years, it's 50 years. Because the entire 50th year is the Jubilee.
Right.
So for that entire 50th year, all the way almost a year later to day 1 of Tishri, the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, that would be the end of the Jubilee cycle, and then you would start over and begin counting again. That's very simply what a Jubilee is. Now, what would happen the Jubilee year was all these servants, the bond servants who had sold themselves to work for their master to pay off their debts, they would be set free. All the debt would be forgiven, and all the property that has changed hands, been sold or lost due to debt, goes back to the original owner, which, see, it's a giant reset button. If the Jubilee was in 2015, in other words, on the Day of Atonement in 2015, which is in the past, a year ago, the Jubilee, the trumpet would have sounded, and by the end of that, on the Feast of Trumpets, that would have been the end of it. Now, so that's already passed. So if that was the Jubilee, it's over. It ended already. And we're still here. And I believe this. I believe the next Jubilee on the calendar is number 7. I do not believe we're going to be here when that's over. I believe we'll be gone to heaven. And I ask people when I speak at conferences, I'll ask for a show of hands. How many think there's going to be 71 Jubilees? Nobody raises their hand. I mean, there's 7 feasts, there's 7 churches, there's 7 angels, 7 trumpets, there's 7 years in the sabbatical cycle, 7 days in a week. There's 7 sevens in the Jubilee cycle. Not only is it the 70th Jubilee, but if you go back to Genesis at creation, we're coming up on the 120th Jubilee from Adam. Now, I realize the Jubilee didn't start till Moses. He instituted it. If you start at Moses and go to the end of the 2000th year of the church age, that's 3,500 years, that's 70 Jubilees. But if you back up to Genesis 6, when God said, "My spirit shall not always dwell with man, but his days shall be 120 years," what is that talking about? I believe he's talking about 120 generations. I believe what God said in Genesis 6 is that he's going to deal with humans and mankind on the earth for 120 generations, which is 6,000 years. No doubt in my mind the world's going to be here for 6,000 years and then the end. So we're coming up on the 70th Jubilee, which is also the 120th Jubilee from Adam, but it's also the 40th Jubilee from Jesus. Now that 40 is an interesting number too.
Yes.
Jesus, Jesus walked the earth, fasted for 40 days. King David, King Saul, and King Solomon all served as king for 40 years. There's just all these 40s in the Bible. It's a pretty important number. It's a number of judgment. It rained night and day for 40 days in Genesis 7, the ark. So not only is it the 70th Jubilee, it's the 40th, also the 40th from Jesus, which is an important number, and it's the 120th Jubilee from Adam. All three of those, and that'll never happen again. The 120th, the 70th, and the 40th, all in the same Jubilee. So if he doesn't come on that Jubilee, then the next one will be the 121st, the 71st, and the 41st. This doesn't compute. I think the 70th Jubilee is on the horizon, and I think we're going to be out of here. I think the world's coming to an end, and as we know it, and the kingdom age is coming in. The old-timers knew this way back in 300 AD, 100 AD, 1500 AD. They all said the world will endure for 6,000 years and then the end. They understood that. Somehow in our generation, we've lost some of this stuff.
Not only church fathers, but the Jewish writers.
Right.
They looked for that where a day is 1,000 years.
Day is 1,000 years.
6,000-year days of human history with the final millennial reign, the seventh.
And of course, the seventh day is a day of rest. The millennium, the kingdom age, is that rest. It's tabernacles.
So as basically as I know how to ask it, and of course we're not date setters, but we are watchers of God's timetables. What do you think is here in terms of, we can't be precise, but we're somewhere in the feel of it.
I think this thing's going to end possibly. If you put a gun to my head and say, Brother Goon, when do you think this thing's going to happen?
I wouldn't do that.
I would say 2017. Now, 2015 was very interesting with the blood moons and all that stuff. And by the way, don't let anybody fool you. That stuff was all real. That all had prophetic meaning. My gut feeling has always been the fall of 2017. Now, it's possible that the Day of Atonement this year, which is October 12th, that'll be past by the time this program airs, probably. October 12th is the Feast of Day of Atonement in Israel. If the Jubilee starts this year, that will be the sounding of the trumpet, at least in God's mind, for the Day of Atonement, and the entire 50th year will be the Jubilee year, which means probably that at the end of the year is probably when that thing is fulfilled and we're taken out of here at the end of the Jubilee. And Christ comes back on the white horse, Revelation 19:11, and takes back possession of the earth. And now I've got good reason why I think 2017 is important here, and that's because of 1967 and 1917. See, in 1967, the Six-Day War, a lot of people believe, and a lot of Jews believe, that was a Jubilee year. I personally think that they may be right. If they're right about that, and again, to your viewers, this is if. We don't know this. This is speculation, but it's good speculation. If 1967 was a Jubilee year, then 2017 will be a Jubilee year.
And 1917.
Now remember, you got to count the whole 50 years, not just the 49. This gets a little confusing.
Let's just state what happened in 1917.
All right. So if the 67 was a Jubilee year, then go back 50 years. Did anything significant happen in 1917? Oh, yeah. Right at the end of World War I, a man named General Allenby was told to go in and take Jerusalem from the Ottoman Turks. And they didn't want Jerusalem destroyed. They didn't want it blown up. They wanted to be very careful. He came up with a plan. He got an airplane, which was, who'd seen an airplane in 1917? When was the Wright brothers? 2007, 1907 or?
1904,
somewhere in there. But anyway, over there in the Middle East, and I doubt anybody'd seen an airplane too much anyway. But what he did is he had some flyers made up. And he put on the flyers, he put it in Arabic, And I like to joke about it. He said, the flyer said, "Get out of Jerusalem now." And it was signed Allenby. And printing was kind of crude in those days. And they had these flyers made up. And when they dropped them, they flew over Jerusalem and they dropped these flyers out of the plane. And here's these Ottoman Turks looking up. And here they are, and they look up and they see this plane. You know, what is that? And these flyers come in, and they grabbed the flyers. When they read those in Arabic, here's what it said to them. "Get out of Jerusalem now," signed Allah. Allenby looked like Allah in Arabic. They thought it was God. They thought Allah was telling them to get out of Jerusalem. So here comes General Allenby. This was November, by the way. I believe it was Hanukkah. He drives in with his army and goes to Jerusalem and doesn't fire a shot. Not one shot is fired. Jerusalem is emptied of the Turks. They take Jerusalem back without firing a shot. And so what does that have to do with the Jubilee? Jerusalem was given to the Christian nation of the world in 1917. That has all the signs of what a Jubilee is, the property going back.
Right. I see what you're saying.
There is no Jewish nation yet. Remember,
Right.
they're scattered. So
Right.
God gives that holy city, Jerusalem, to the nation of Great Britain.
As a trust.
And of course, the Ottoman, the Balfour Agreement, all that's going to come out of this. So that a little later in 1945, they have the property now, and they have the ability to give that to Israel, which they did in 1945.
So the first thing of this is that 1917 is the year of the Shemitah, world shaking. You know, Shemitah is linked to world shaking and all these things. The period that is given, the parameter of this mystery means it ends in September 1917. So September 1917 to September 1918 is the key period of the parameters when something has to happen. Did anything happen? What happened in the exact parameters is that Britain is winning World War I. The Ottoman Turkish Empire falls. They have the land of Israel. Britain takes the land of Israel, says we are giving this back now to the Jewish people. They can return home. It's going to be a Jewish homeland. This is the first time in 2,000 years. When does it happen? November 1917, the exact time parameter of the Jubilee restoration. So here Israel is returning home. Here everyone is returning to their ancestral possession, the beginning of the restoration. Now, this is going to lead to the next. Now, if you take this and you go to the next seventh Shemitah, where does it take?
Why these four? Why these colors? I'm going to submit to you that there is information contained in the colors. God is not trying to confuse us. And He's not just throwing colors out there. There must be a rational justification for why He picked these four. Take a look at your screen and just follow with me. What do you see? Here's the symbol, the national symbol of next door neighbor to Israel, Jordan. What colors do you see? Can you help me here? White, red, black, and green. There is the Palestinian, symbolized by that flag. What colors do you see on the national flag of Sudan? This is another player in World War III, according to Ezekiel 38:39. Let's go to Kuwait. Let's go to the United Arab Emirates. What colors do you see? Well, let's just go to Libya because it could just be coincidence here. What colors do you see? Okay, let's go to Afghanistan. What do you see? Let's go to Syria. What do you see? Let's go to Iraq. What do you see? I wonder if God has successfully communicated something through simple colors.
But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Nation shall rise against nation.
The nation will rise against nation, and just so you know, that's the wrong translation. Its ethnic group will rise against ethnic group. And so we can see that even within the United States, the ethnic groups fighting against the ethnic groups.
And kingdom against kingdom. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines and pestilences, and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye shall answer, For I will give you a mouth and wisdom which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinsfolks and friends. And some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars. And upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree, and all the trees. When they now shoot forth, ye see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand. So likewise ye, when ye see these things come to pass, know ye that the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away.